Welcome back to The Lurking Fear. I'm glad you found your way here. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. If you've been with us for a while, leave a comment below. I want to know what you think of tonight's account. This story details a series of events from 2003 that allegedly led to the quiet evacuation of a small town in northern Arizona. It comes from a former deputy sheriff who has remained silent for over 20 years. He claims that what happened in that town wasn't a natural disaster, but a siege by something that defies explanation. A predator that could mimic our voices and wear our fears like a second skin. Here is his story. I was a deputy sheriff in a town of about 600 people in the high desert of northern Arizona. I won't use the real name. Let's call it Pine Ridge. I took the job after years of working the beat in Phoenix. My wife, Carol, wanted our daughter, Emily, somewhere safe. We wanted quiet. We wanted boring. What we got was a nightmare that systematically dismantled our community. It started on September 23, 2003. A resident named Janet Holloway called the station. She reported that someone had been looking into her windows at night. She saw a face at her kitchen window around 9 p.m. She said the proportions were off. That was the specific word she used, off. I went out to investigate. I'm 6'1", and I had to stand on my tiptoes to even see into that window. I found scuff marks in the rocky soil, but nothing definitive. I told her to keep the lights on and chalked it up to a peeping Tom. 2 more calls came in that week. A Mr. Rodriguez saw a figure moving strangely outside his home at 2 a.m. He said it moved as if the person were intoxicated, jerking and twitching. His dog barked until sunrise. Then the Bartley family reported the same thing. A face in the window, too tall, with features that didn't sit right on the skull. Sheriff Reynolds and I assumed it was teenagers or someone on drugs. We told people to lock up. We thought it would blow over. Small town hysteria is a real thing. One person sees a shadow, and suddenly everyone is seeing ghosts. But this didn't blow over. By October, the livestock killings began. Tom Dillon lost a dozen chickens in one night. They were torn apart, the wire of the coop ripped like wet paper. They weren't eaten, just destroyed. Then a goat was killed, then rabbits. By the end of the month, we had a dozen incidents. Locals started guarding their property with rifles. One man, Bill, sat on his porch for 3 nights straight. The very night he gave up and went inside to sleep, something slaughtered all 15 of his birds. It felt intelligent. It felt like it was waiting for us to get comfortable. Sightings moved from the windows to the open road. A practical man named Brandon reported a figure standing in his lane at 3 a.m., 7 feet tall, impossibly thin. He said he had to swerve to miss it. He described it as unnerving. Everyone's description matched: tall, gaunt, moving with a disjointed, jerky rhythm. But no one ever saw the face clearly. It was always just a silhouette in the dark. Then came the call that changed everything. Patricia Ames called 911 at midnight. I wasn't on duty, but I was listening to the scanner. The terror in her voice made me grab my keys. She said someone was outside her house calling her name, but they were using her husband's voice. Trish, come outside. Trish, I need you. She almost opened the door. It sounded exactly like her husband, Dan. The tone, the inflection, it was perfect, but she rolled over in bed, and Dan was sound asleep right next to her. Then she heard it again, coming from right outside the bedroom window. Trish, why won't you come outside? She woke Dan. They both listened to his voice coming from the darkness. Dan grabbed his hunting rifle. I arrived 10 minutes later. The house was lit up like a Christmas tree. Dan, a combat veteran and a man built like a tank, was shaking on the porch. Patricia was inside, clutching their children. I searched the property. Under the bedroom window, I found prints. They were barefoot and human-shaped, but wrong. They were 14, maybe 15 inches long. My size 11 boots looked like a child's shoes next to them. The stride was unnatural, huge gaps between steps, as if the thing was on stilts. We tracked the prints toward the hills for 50 yards, and then, in the middle of a clear patch of dirt, they just stopped. They didn't fade. They didn't scuff. The last print was pressed deep into the earth, and then nothing, as if it had simply lifted off the ground and vanished. I didn't have answers for Dan. I just told them to lock their doors. By November, the fear had infected the schools. Parents were picking up their kids every day. Children were whispering about things watching them from the playground. My own daughter, Emily, 13 years old, stopped talking about school. She stopped sleeping. On November 17th, 5 teenagers went out to a bonfire spot 2 miles out of town. A girl named Sarah was with them. Around 11:30 p.m., 4 of them came running back to town on foot, terrified. They left Sarah's car. They left their shoes. They said something had circled them just beyond the firelight, something tall and thin. When one kid threw a bottle at it, the thing stepped into the light. They all ran. They said it chased them, crashing through the brush faster than any animal, sounding like it was on all fours. But Sarah didn't make it back. We launched a massive search. 20 volunteers, state police, dogs. We found the campsite. We found Sarah's shoes. But no Sarah. We found her the next morning, walking along Highway 89 5 miles away. She was barefoot, her feet shredded by the asphalt. She was catatonic. She wouldn't speak. She looked right through her parents. Sarah spent 3 days in the hospital. Physically, she was fine. Mentally, she was gone. She never spoke about that night again. Her family eventually moved to California. That was when the nightmares started for my daughter. She begged me not to work the night shift, but I had to. I was the deputy. By Thanksgiving, the town was unraveling. The grocery store was empty by sunset. Businesses closed early. I spoke to a Navajo resident named Thomas, a man I'd known for years. I asked him what was happening. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He just said, "Keep your family inside. Do not go out after dark. And if it talks to you, do not answer." "What is it, Thomas?" I asked. "I cannot say its name," he whispered. "But it is old, it is angry, and it knows you are afraid." By December, 50 people had moved away. The town felt hollowed out. Then the break-ins started. Strange break-ins. Nothing was stolen. People would wake up to find their back doors wide open, food eaten on the counter, photos moved, clothes rearranged on the bed. It wasn't robbery. It was curiosity. It was checking our cages. Then came the call from Edward. Edward was 75, a man who lived alone on the east side. He called 911, whispering that someone was in his house, walking around downstairs. He had barricaded himself in his bedroom with a dresser. Sheriff Reynolds and I went in with weapons drawn. The front door was wide open, the winter air blowing through the hall. The house was dark, but we could hear the silence, heavy and oppressive. We cleared the first floor. Living room, kitchen, bathroom. Nobody. But the prints were there. Muddy, distorted footprints going through every room, up and down the hallway. We went upstairs. Edward was waiting behind his barricaded door with a baseball bat, shaking uncontrollably. "It was down there," he told us. "It walked past my door 2 times. I could hear it breathing." We searched the attic, the closets, under the beds. Nothing. But the mud on the carpet proved he wasn't imagining things. Whatever it was had walked through his home while he cowered upstairs, just listening. Edward packed a bag that night. He never spent another night in that house. By this point, we had to bring the state police back in. They set up a command post and brought in tracking dogs, German shepherds trained to find anything. But the dogs were useless. Actually, worse than useless. They were terrified. When the handlers brought them to the fresh prints, the dogs wouldn't track. They would get to where the scent started, sit down and whine. They tucked their tails and refused to move forward. One officer, a veteran handler, said he'd never seen a reaction like it. A detective from Phoenix named Rich pulled me aside. "I've been a cop for 23 years, he said. "I've never seen a combination of reports like this. It's nonsensical." He asked me what I thought it was. I told him the truth. I didn't know. "It's not safe," Rich told me before he left. He looked genuinely rattled. "You need to protect your family." He was right. On December 18th at 2 a.m., A silent alarm went off at the hardware store. I responded, expecting a false alarm. I pulled into the lot. It was freezing cold, and at the far end of the pavement, where the asphalt met the desert scrub, I saw it. It was standing still, tall, unnaturally tall. Even from 80 feet away, the silhouette was wrong. The neck was too long, like a cartoon drawing stretched out. I stepped out of my cruiser, hand on my weapon. Police, identify yourself. It didn't move. It just stood there, a statuesque nightmare against the night sky. I took a step closer. I was fixated on that long, thin neck. Then it dropped. It didn't crouch like a human. It folded itself down, limbs contorting, collapsing onto all fours like a spider. And then it ran. It didn't run like a dog or a bear. It moved in a grotesque, scuttling sprint, covering 100 yards in seconds. It moved with a speed that made me nauseous to watch. It disappeared into the dark. And God help me, I was relieved, because if it had come toward me, I don't think my gun would have mattered. Sheriff Reynolds arrived minutes later. We found the prints. And just like before, they went out 100 feet and vanished into thin air. Dave looked at me, pale and shaken. "We need to talk about evacuation," he said. "We can't fight this." But we didn't leave fast enough. A week later, just after Christmas, I was home watching TV. Emily screamed from upstairs. It was a sound of pure primal terror. I ran up, shotgun in hand. Emily was standing in the center of her room, shaking, pointing at the window. "It was looking at me, Daddy," she sobbed. "It was looking right at me." I ran outside. I swept the yard with my flashlight. Nothing. But right there, in the dirt beneath her windowsill, were the fresh prints, the long, distorted feet. That was it. My wife, Carol, looked at me with a steely resolve. "We are leaving. Tomorrow. I don't care about the job. We are going." We packed the car the next morning. We drove to Nevada to stay with family. As we drove out, I saw other cars loaded with boxes. The exodus had begun. I stayed in touch with Dave, the sheriff. He stayed behind for a few more weeks. He told me about a man named Robert, a veteran hunter who lived on the edge of town. Robert heard something trying to open his back door at 2 a.m. He saw the silhouette through the glass. He didn't hesitate. He opened the door and fired his shotgun center mass. Robert swore he hit it. He said the thing screamed, a sound that wasn't human, and scuttled away on all fours, bleeding. They found blood. Dark blood, almost black. It trailed for 200 yards into the desert, and then, like the footprints, it just stopped. No body, no trail, just a sudden end. 2 weeks later, Sheriff Reynolds saw it in broad daylight, watching him from the tree line. That was enough for him. He packed his family and left. Within 48 hours, the mayor issued an emergency evacuation order, citing credible threats to public safety. The town is effectively a ghost town now. The official story got buried, people moved on, traumatized and scattered across the Southwest. I'm retired now. I try to live a normal life, but I know what I saw. I know what hunted us. That town died, but whatever killed it, it's still out there. And that wraps up tonight's story. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed, join the community. Until next time, stay safe and always sleep with the lights on.